Hello, and welcome to my symposium presentation, The Language of Fashion, the Fashion Industry in Dakar. This presentation is about research I conducted in the summer of 2019 in Dakar, a city settled on the most western point of the continent and is the capital of Senegal. The purpose of this research was to explore the fashion industry in Dakar and what that entailed in respect to Senegal's colonial past, which was formerly colonized by the French. Fashion is defined by the materialistic and Western characteristics that is prescribed to exist in. Fashion in Dakar takes on a personal and mundane existence that seems to be more realistic in its purpose. This research gives a non-Western perspective on redefining fashion through the perspective of people that I spoke to within the industry and outside of the industry. Africa would never be perceived to produce such luxury or creatively stimulating imagery such as fashion when you have Europe dominating the narrative. This research challenges the notion of who can take ownership of something we all participate in globally. To collect my data, I used interviews, videos, photos, and ethnographic notes. I had formal interviews with designers and tailors who were local, and I also spoke with just everyday people about their thoughts on the fashion industry within Dakar. So there are areas of production around the city, one being batik dyeing. Batik dyeing is a great example of a cross-cultural interaction because batik dyeing is not native to the continent of Africa, but rather to Asia, and it was brought to Africa through colonialism. So here we see sort of a manifestation of that and a different version of what it originally was, but still something very familiar to its original process. So the process involves the strategic use of colors, patterns, and product names to reflect the current social, cultural, and political climate. One particular batik cloth was called Facebook, which is used globally by users to connect. Facebook had a technological impact in Africa, and that was reflected in this fabric. So this fabric will go on to be used to create something unique that can be seen on the streets or down the runway. Now, it was apparent quickly that there is a self-sustaining industry in Dakar. By definition, an industry produces goods within an economy. Fashion works in a long process of different roles that result in a piece of clothing or a collection of clothing. So the process in Dakar is personable and arguably easier in that sense compared to Europe. The process involves tailors who can be found in every street or market, to local designers and the local models they enlist to present their designs. So every interaction is a partnership because without one, you can't have the other. And I think this is what makes the industry so unique, because every person who's a part of the process of making something is acknowledged and appreciated for their specific role, rather than in more of the Western fashion industry. We focus more on the designers and the models than we do the tailors and the people who physically are making these pieces and making the designs of these designers literally come to life, and then these models who then go on to physically present that in the world. So Dakar is also home to Dakar Fashion Week. And so the event lasts for a week and includes designers of the diaspora. The show follows the Western template of a fashion show, but still infuses African culture. Besides the designers themselves, the audience reflects the diversity in the continent. There were so many different types of people there when I attended the fashion shows myself. And it really just reflects sort of who it can come to fashion shows and who should be able to. And it really just was an array of people. And I think the audience within itself looks a lot different from an audience in a Western fashion show. The designs and models wearing them were unapologetically Black and a representation of the future of fashion. Very much in a Western perspective, the discussions around fashion have very much been about what does its future look like? Will it become more inclusive? Are we in that process right now of it becoming more inclusive and seeing more different types of people, whether that's racially or by body type? And so that was something that was sort of already being represented and tested here in Dakar. And so it's really unique to see that here, that they're sort of already getting to that point and have been for a few years now. Since, Dakar Fashion Week was founded a few years back by Dama Peri, who is a Senegalese designer herself. And she essentially created this fashion week here because we are all very much aware of the other fashion weeks around the world. And in her mind, West Africa needed one of its own, Dakar needed one of its own. So she created this a platform for other African designers in general, not even necessarily, Senegalese. And the designers in Dakar source the fabrics and inspirations for their designs from the very streets of Dakar. One designer that I was able to speak with, Helena Daba, who is the designer for and founder of Sisters of Africa, she presented at Dakar Fashion Week, and she spoke sort of about where the inspiration of her line came from, and she said it came from her mother. And her mother, as an African woman, had a specific style, and that's something that's very much a part of the core identity of an African woman, especially in West Africa, because they play such a core role within the family and within society, and what they wear is something that is very distinctual about them. And so she sort of took what her mother used to wear and what she saw her aunts wear and things like that, and she's made a more current, updated version of that, but still paying homage and respect to that aspect of her culture, one that is very much shared with, specifically within Senegal. And again, that was just a great example of sort of having the inspiration for the designs coming from the streets of Dakar, coming from their life in Senegal, and other designers who were there as well. There was a designer from South Africa who utilized his Zulu culture within his line. And there were plenty of other designers of the diaspora from the Congo, a designer from the US. So it really was just uplifting Black designers of color in this space, which is something that I think the Western fashion industry has very much struggled with, but somehow Dakar has done it with such ease, and it's sort of shown in this fashion week. So events such as Fashion Week are also well known, among locals who aren't directly participating in it. So Fashion Week is also a shared, it's a shared aspect of life in Dakar. Everyone is aware of it. Everyone knows when it's coming, and why all these people are coming to the city all of a sudden. And it's a great way for people to learn more about Dakar itself. And it's sort of a way, I think, that Adama Pri has been trying to put Dakar on the map, in a sense, because there are designers and models there who want to branch out from the country itself. So of course, this research can be more extensive in exploring the African diaspora. The industry in Dakar includes other designers that aren't Senegalese but promote their individual culture through fashion, as I mentioned. And it really just became a mix of different African cultures. And so this project can be built upon and extended as well, considering the amount of information that can be learned. There are so many people in Dakar whose perspectives still need to be shared and provide insight into the further intricacies of fashion's cultural significance in the city and the country. This research conclusively provides a narrative around the fashion industry in Dakar. It evaluates how we define fashion and how its culture and its cultural impact and infusions. The topic itself was easy to talk about with many people because it is a part of the culture in Dakar. Fashion is a part of everyday life, and it doesn't take on such an elitist stature that we might think of in the West. Many people I interact with had much to say when I told them the purpose of my time in Senegal, and had a lot of positive things to say about the industry and sort of their own participation in the industry themselves. And so, the conversation around fashion on a mundane and industrial level reveals the community. It reveals this community that fosters fashion as a language and not a barrier, and in and of itself between people. And so, I think it really challenges the Western influence and the Western narrative that's often surrounded by fashion. So thank you for your attention. This concludes my presentation on the language of fashion, the fashion industry in Dakar.